this is what I love about the TLC, and like particularly I was kind of immediately drawn to Paul Vanderklay, because he's all about the person. These randos, like, just treating people like human beings, no matter where you're coming from. Luke, he's Orthodox, and he's like dropping Rob Bell, David Bentley Hart, like all these names. And I'm like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? Like I feel pretty isolated. There's a group of people in my church community who we get each other, and thank God for that. But it's also really lovely to run into this community of people who are thinking freely. Not everyone's an expert and super educated. I'm YouTube educated.
Amen.
I never really went to college. I kind of did a little community college. I love learning in classroom settings. But I didn't test well. And I was just yeah, that's not going to be.
This to me is this then jumps into Paul's metavangelical.
Wait. One last. You
okay, go ahead.
Pause. So the whole thing, my whole point was this space is actually helping me stay. It's helping me have a little bit of outlet. I'm not alone. And I mean, I love my church. I'm not actually, there have been moments where I've wanted to leave. But I'm at a much more stable place just personally. But having these little nodes that I can kind of access whenever I want is really, really beautiful and helpful. All right.
Yeah. And it does. That goes back to the conversation about stay, like you were saying, scratching that itch in the digital space, and maybe once or twice a year in an embodied space. But I need to move to this thing. It's that may not be,
maybe and you're already home.
Yeah. And so I think that's true. And the other piece that you were poking at with, Paul's big thesis on his metagelical thing is Rob Bell plays a pretty big part from the emerging movement. And then moving in from the which you have a big history with the emerging movement, merging, whichever side of the I think Mark Driscoll drew that line actually. But
you can define it, man. That's not it.
Amen. Well, that was a big spirit in the TLC too, to even say that. It was well, if, it's not something you can define. It's so it's so
no, but that's the logos. That's the Tao. There is something very true about that. And I love that about this space.
So the piece though, being able to come and integrate that part of yourself and to dialogue with that, to have that conversation is so important, because we have all been trapped in kind of a marketplace of subcultures, and it's well, what do I do with that part of my life? And I think that sometimes we want to shame that part, oh my gosh, I was so cringe, oh, I was a cringe evangelical. It's no, I'm sorry. That was you. That was you, that was me. And now those people are in, and this is going to help be that process. And I even think say in 5 years, well, I'll use this story. So we just hired the pastor back to our little church that was the pastor of the church that fired me. We're going to be together again.
Awesome.
And where was I going with this? That sidetracked me. So when he came to interview, he's from Long Beach. He was at Long Beach. He's from SoCal, grew up in SoCal. He comes to this little town in Arkansas. Our little church, it kind of fit some things culturally that he was interested in. And then we met and we were really vibing on some stuff. And some of it was about integrating ancient and future and some liturgy with this modern thing, and how does this all, can these things work together? And I'm way further down that road now, but I say all that because when he actually came, I told you I was part of this band. We were they weren't at my church, but when I'm on the road, full throttle Hillsong, full throttle, we were our goal was to be as good or whatever.
Yeah.
He said, you know, he grew up at Chuck, I can't remember the guy's name, from the Jesus movie, that a Jesus movement that came out of Calvary Chapel. Kelsey Grammer played this guy recently. And he was on Jordan Peterson. The guy was on Jordan Peterson's podcast from Calvary Chapel. Anyways, my friend, my pastor, he grew up going to that church. So his dad was a part of the Jesus hippie movement, and you know, Jesus music and modern songs and stuff. My friend, he goes off, he goes to UCLA. He went to their ministry school, and he was kind of like, it was, you know, kind of lowbrow evangelicalism. They were teaching stuff, and he was like, no, I want to enter into more like the elite like studies. So he goes to UCLA, gets in, does a history degree, then goes, gets his MDiv at Yale. And he's interfacing with like radical progressive stuff, but then like Tim Keller is really hot at the time. And like, he's starting to like, okay, where am I? And he gets spit out, but he's like, no, I'm, you know, hymns, investments, and liturgy. Or I think there's something here. Well, then he comes and he visits our church, and it's me and my skinny jeans and, you know, trying to work with this kind of hodgepodge community, people and music. And he said the music was good. And it awoke something in him that he had forgotten. He's like, I forgot that this is like a deep part of me. Contemporary music is actually a deep part of me, this rock thing in a church.
Yeah.
Because that was his childhood and his teenage years. And like, and instead of it, like, he had gone off, like, I've evolved, I'm more evolved now, you know.
Yeah.
Give me the divine liturgy.
Yeah.
And he told me this recently. He's like, Christian, it awoke something in me when that time. And I realized, no, I think there's something good here. Mm-hmm. You know, I've kind of I'm a little more like hesitant to get into all of that stuff again. Actually, that's another conversation, but all that to say, to love, what does it mean to, you know, for all the people maybe trying to get through level 5 of development and whatever part of what did you say, the sensitive self, and caring for your history and caring for the things that made you, like, that's what I'm hearing from you, saying, oh, Luke's talking about Rob Bell. Like, how do I have a conversation with it? It's almost like, how do I talk to somebody that's been in Orthodoxy for 30 years, 40 years about Rob Bell in that part of my life? I'm like, they don't even have a clue. And it's not that it's bad that they don't understand. It's just that they don't, you know, and it was a big deal to me at one time. So I think that is part of the metagelical conversation, is like, what you're bringing these into all these other spaces, and they are not. Jonathan Peugeot was a missionary, like a Baptist missionary. Like, it doesn't just disappear, you know, like, so you know, as much as we might want to or something. And so I think it's important to figure out how to integrate that so we can develop as people.
Yes.
So, cool, man. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.